Hey guys, welcome to episode 10 of SchlickArtTV. We are here with Samantha, co-owner of Lucky Luke Brewing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Yeah, we were super happy to have you on for this episode because we have a lot in common.
Yes, we do.
Not only did we both build our businesses from the ground up, starting from scratch, starting from an idea, but we also run companies with our spouses.
Talk about challenging.
And they're both called Brian, which is, we gotta put that out there as well. Brian and Samantha Schmitz, like this is, it's a lot, isn't it?
It is.
We got to give a shout out to Brian. He's not here today, but we talked to him. We prepped him about this episode before we were getting into it, so he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. At least you get to, have beer through yours, right?
Yes.
Your business. What do you
Unlimited amounts of beer to help us cope through the challenges, the marital challenges that running a business might include.
Yeah. How did you get started? Like from the idea up, how did this begin?
So I am really into cooking. I love to cook. And so I was cooking a lot at home. And Brian sat down at our dining room table one day and said, "Oh, I know where everything on our table came from." And he pointed at his beer and said, "Oh, except for that." So a week later, I had a homebrew kit for him. And he learned how to homebrew. And if you know my husband, you'll know that he doesn't do anything half-ass. And so, a month later, he's got like a full thing. And then a month later from that, he's got like a full setup in the garage. So he homebrewed for a couple of years. And we really found a lot of community in the beer industry. We loved going to breweries and that sort of thing. And so it just snowballed. And then he had this idea, if I'm going to work this hard for somebody and something, I want to do it for myself. And so that's where the idea of Lucky Luke came from.
What were you both doing before?
I was running a bakery, and so I did baking for 5 years, and he was in the construction industry. So I will tell you that having him in the construction industry has paid off in dividends, opening 3 different locations and having to manage subcontractors and negotiate leases and all of that. So he definitely has put his skills to use in this world.
That's awesome. And then you closed the bakery to start this business?
Yeah, the bakery had happened to close right before we opened the brewery. I had an opportunity to keep it going, but I decided to not, so that we could focus on the brewery full time. And so it was definitely a leap of faith, and then all of a sudden we were doing something together that we had never done before, as you guys know.
I feel like every business, when they first start out and they're building it from scratch, there's like an aha moment, or there's a couple of aha moments of like, gosh, it's working, like, oh my God, like, or somebody says something to you and you're like, you look at each other and go, oh my gosh, we need to implement this.
Yeah.
Like we need to, take this, and that's going to help us grow or understand what we're doing on a whole other set of levels, right? And for us, we were, like as much as we own a marketing company now, we started from a photography and video background. And when we first started, we were stood in the grocery store, and we were in line for the checkout, and the woman in front of us, she was like just having the worst day. Something must have happened earlier on in the day. Somebody must have said something to her or what have you. And she started losing it at the magazines. Like she started like having like an existential like crisis. And she was like, why do they put them on the magazines like that? Nobody looks like that. I want to look like that. Why can't they make regular women look like that? And I just went and like looked at, and we were having this conversation. But again, this was like an aha moment in our first, few years of business getting started, which those little moments really helped propel us. Can you remember any of those moments, like from the beginning when, you're getting started and you're like, we don't know what we're doing? Because it is, as a small business. I was joking with Doug and I was saying, I don't care if you went to Harvard Business School. If you are starting a business from scratch, you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
It is a case of trial and error, and failure becomes your friend because you learn something every single time, right? Tell me about that experience for you.
I would say in the very beginning, we had a couple of moments. I'm sure I still have the video on my phone, but I remember So before we opened, we were doing a lot of marketing, and we were doing like merch runs, and we were selling merch to whoever wanted to buy merch, and you know, getting the brand out there and that sort of thing. And I remember I was at the mall, and I'm getting in the car, and there's somebody with our merch on, and I didn't know who it was. And so I have like a video of me like in between the cars, like zooming in, like, Brian, do you know this person? Oh, you don't know? I don't know him either. Like, somebody's wearing our merch out in the wild, you know, and like that was really exciting for us. We had a couple of instances like that, like traveling. In the first couple of years, I was away at a spa with some girlfriends out of town, and somebody came in with a shirt on. My girlfriend's like, do you know them? I'm like, no, I don't. Isn't that so cool? So little things like that had happened in the early years, I would say. And then like you were saying, like your business kind of evolves, you know, and like your aha moments evolve. Brian and I, over the past couple of years, even more seriously, have really started to investing in ourselves. So, we, you know, whether it be a conference like you guys or a book, like we had both read a book by Keith Cunningham, and it like changed our whole perspective. Yeah. And when we were open, we sure as heck didn't know what we were doing now. We just hired all these people, you know, our workforce quadrupled overnight when we opened the restaurant, and then we had to lay everybody off. It was crazy. And I remember looking at Brian and saying, you know, if we decided we didn't want to do this anymore, nobody would blame us for it. Yeah. Like we could totally walk away from all of this right now, and it would be understandable, because this is like, I don't know what we're doing. Yeah. And I remember we gave it a couple days, and we came back to talk to each other, and I was like, I don't want to stop doing this. I love this. I love the people. I love creating moments for people. I love people coming together to cheers after work, to celebrate a promotion, to celebrate date night, to do something together. You know, that was kind of like the foundation of our business, and we get to experience that every single day. And so I think that when you realize that, I have continual aha moments, I think, where I realize that our passion and like the reason why we're here, I get to experience that often.
Yeah. When it comes to what we do compared to other people in our industry, I feel like we're kind of a luxury experience that, you know, when people come in, they very much go, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that. Oh my gosh, like, you know, I thought I was just coming in for a quick, you know, a quick photo or a quick, you know, a video shoot, or I didn't realize your level of what you guys can create. And we hear a lot of those stories, and that makes us, through that service and experience that we kind of talked about before, it really makes us, again, have those continual aha moments that it's working. This is what we're trying to create. Yeah. This is how we're trying to help people. Yeah.
Right.
For you, how do you differentiate yourself from other brewing companies in this area?
I would say, I mean, going into it, we had a strong focus on, we want to brew good beer, and we want to be a place for people to gather to celebrate something. And we want to really like honor that celebration, right? Yeah. And so brewing good beer is something that has always been a focus for us. And for example, I remember when hazy IPAs were first trending, and there was a handful of brewers who were like, oh, we're never gonna brew that kind of beer, and this and that, you know. And I'm a believer in like giving the people what they want, and like the trends are gonna come and go. I'm sure that you guys see it in marketing.
Obviously, right out of the bat, you're running a brewery, you're running, you know, a place that needs more than 2 people tackling all the work, yeah. Right? But making that decision to hire, and how you decided to train that staff in your core values and in your messaging and in, you know, the strategies to succeed. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
You know, something that just came up recently again when we were doing some training, because I have good employee retention, so I don't have to train often. So sometimes when I do train, I'm like, well, shoot, I forgot how to do this. You know, it takes me a minute, like, hold on, why don't you know this? Oh, because you're new and I just haven't done this in a while. So something that recently got talked about again and implemented again within my team is Luke's Way. So we call it Luke's Way, and making sure that people like, okay, sure, you think you know how to do this, but let me show you Luke's Way, and like really leaning into like our way of doing things so that we have that continuity between all of our staff, between all of our locations. You know, and every location's going to have kind of its own subculture of its own. That's to be expected. How could it not? Yeah. You know, and so that's okay. And I don't fight that. I let each of those subcultures kind of thrive in their own environment, because each one of them have a unique customer base, their own regulars,
Yeah.
different kind of music that they like to play on different kind of nights because that's what everybody wants. You know, so there are some things that you kind of have to let go of the reins a little bit and like, okay, you can have that, run with that.
They can see what works in their location kind of thing. And
Yeah.
have their own personality, so to speak, right?
Yeah. But for the most part, we all kind of have that like service mentality.
Yeah. So like in our business, storytelling is a huge part of what we do. So in getting our messaging out there for our own brand, but also like helping other brands tell their stories, right? Whether that's through, you know, video interviews and video marketing and even photography and things like that.
Yeah.
So kind of what elements of storytelling work within your business as far as maybe the branding or how you name a beer or just things like that? What people experience, like what stories are you guys telling to kind of bring people to you?
People want to feel like they're in on it. You know, we do a lot of behind the scenes in our Instagram stories and that kind of stuff. Like, let me walk you through a day in the life of one of our servers. Let me show you what our brewer is doing on a Tuesday afternoon. That sort of thing I think is really important just to kind of give them a sneak peek. They don't want just, here's your beer, come drink it. You know, like, let me tell you a little bit more about this or why we've chosen to do it this way. Or, you know, we have little stories. At 2 of our locations, we have penny top bars and they're all heads up pennies, except for one, there's one that's tails up in each of them. And the reason why we did this is because we were at a bar before we opened and they had this beautiful copper top bar. And I was like, oh, I love it. And my husband's like, oh, it's too expensive. We can't do that. So we, with the name Lucky, we decided to do heads up pennies. Well, little did we know, we would spend more in epoxy and labor and nobody had fingertips at the end of it because we all had to like super glue these pennies down. It was like so much work. But that's a fun story that, you know, you sit at the bar and you would just be like, oh, a penny top bar or whatever. Like, no, there's blood, sweat, and tears.
You did it twice?
We did it twice. Yes. And then at our Santa Clarita location, it's already a copper bar. So I was like, I don't have to do it here because I already have the copper top bar that I wanted to begin with.
That's awesome.
I feel like that kind of gives people ownership, right? Like your customers come in and they feel like they're part of the story, right? They're part of understanding how you guys built what you built, right?
Oh my gosh. So at our first location, I will never forget this, one of our dear friends, we'd asked friends and family to give us pennies for the bar. And one of our dear friends, when it was all said and done, she came and sat at the bar and she put her hands on the bar and she had given us a bunch of pennies that were in her dad's collection after he passed. You know, just a penny jar that he had. So she brought that in. She put her hands on the bar and says, oh, my dad is in here. And I just like died. I'm like, this is what this is all about. You know, like having those moments with people, you know, is very cool. So the branding has evolved over the years and depending on which each location needs and what fits the vibe. Our Santa Clarita location is such a large patio and we wanted full color there. So we have 3 different big murals with bright colors and brightly colored umbrellas, and we want it to feel fun and festive and happy and joyful and that sort of thing. So
and making it your own as well, because you know Wolf Creek is a legacy here in Santa Clarita and will always be a legacy with Lena and Rob, you know, and their story and their individualism. And so to take that over, as much as you're celebrating their legacy along with yours by keeping the space going, you still have to make it your own. You have to put your footprint on it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if your business doesn't work, you know, this doesn't help your whole life, the life you are building together, right?
Absolutely.
And so we talk to a lot of solopreneurs about not having that person, right? And I think that bleeds into you adding a third person because, you know, the third person, you know, they don't live in your house and they aren't following, you know, raising your kids and they're not invested in, well, they are, but they're not invested in the life that you are trying to create for yourself. They are still an employee. So tell me about that experience.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective, and I hadn't quite thought about it that way yet because they're extensions of you, but at the same time, at any given moment, they can quit. You know, they don't. And we've had that. We've had longtime employees, people who've helped us build our business, you know, who we never thought we would get rid of. They were lifers. We'd call them lifers. And then all of a sudden they're like, we want to move to Alabama. And it's like, what? No, you can't move. You have to stay here with us. You know, but it's not their dream. It's our dream. And so we've had to, you know, as hard as that is, we've had to really just honor other people's decisions when it comes to stuff like that. and at the end of the day realize that we have to have really good boundaries with them because this isn't their business. You know, Brian and I will be in bed sometimes, and as we're going to, you know, one of us is falling asleep and we're like, about tomorrow, are you going to drop off that beer for that, you know, you know how it is.
Yeah, it's usually me doing that. And he's like, really, we're having this conversation right now.
Right, and you can't do that with employees. You can't overburden them. You have to have clearer boundaries with them. And
and you can't do it if you're the individual as well. You're the one lying in bed, you know, and with your spouse who works for somebody else, who you can't be like,
yes.
He's not going to deal with that. I have to get up and either write it all down and make sure this gets done tomorrow, or fall asleep and hope I remember it in the morning. So I just have a quick question, you know, to go back to the marketing that we were talking before. You know, you mentioned, you know, you do a lot of videos on Instagram and storytelling, and then obviously your brand tells a story as well, and the bar has told a story. When it comes to you planning your marketing, what does that look like? Is it a strategy? Is it just, you know, how you have to do a certain amount of posts and you see things and you're just very creative in the moment? What does that look like for you?
I would say, so if you look at my marketing, I have three different avenues because we have 3 different locations. And if you look at all 3 of them side by side, they're all very different. And we have kind of figured out what works for each of the demographics, to be honest with you. And so there is a lot of thought that goes into each of them, because what works for a post at the brewery in Santa Clarita does not work for a post at the restaurant. And it just doesn't. For whatever, you know, the algorithm is what the algorithm is. And so we've really had to lean into, you know, doubling down on what the people want, and again, not taking the approach of like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, take it, you know, I know that you want something else, but I'm not doing it. No, we really try to lean into giving people what they want when it comes to how we approach the marketing differently, whether it be events at this location, food specials at that location, you know, live music over here, or whatever. So it is, you have to wear kind of 3 different hats when you are looking at the marketing.
How often do you do your marketing? Do you sit down and say, for this amount of time, I'm going to do this once a month, twice a month, once a week?
Weekly, and I have people that help. And so that's, you know, that's absolutely necessary, I think, because you do get so bombarded with social media these days with it's not just 3 platforms, it's 3 Instagrams, it's 3 Facebooks, it's certain community pages that you want to be active on, it's responding to people's comments, it's, you know, if social is your only thing. We also do an email blast that I do, and try to do that, you know, a couple times a month. And again, that I think that avenue for us has been something that people look at more for like behind the scenes stuff. Like they feel like they know it before it hits socials. And so that's kind of fun to do it that way with them. They get the teasers before everybody else does, and let's make it fun.
Yeah. And it's so delegating it has become, that's one of the things that you've implemented in your business, to decide that is one of the things you delegate. Yeah, it's not your strength. Your strength is, you know, running a business, and, you know, or running 3 businesses essentially. And that this is something that needs to be, I'm sure you still have a voice in it of what you actually need, but it is something that you can hand off comfortably, right?
It's in-house people, and so that makes it a lot easier, because it's in-house content. They know what's going on in the day-to-day. They can, you know, they're there, they can snap a picture. It's not, I don't have to call a firm and say, hey, this is what I need you to post, because that management is difficult, I think, when you outsource it to that degree. And so having it be in-house people is really what saves it. And also, over time, I have realized to, again, let go of the reins a little bit, like, okay, this isn't as pretty as I would make it, you know, like.
It's better than perfect.
Exactly. I have absolutely said that a gazillion times myself. Done is better than perfect. That's not what I would have done, but that's fine. That's not the cover photo I would have chosen, but that's fine. That, you know, whatever the case may be. And you kind of just let go a little bit. And
so when when it's an in-house person, did you look at their strengths and be like, I can see that this person is super into this? You wouldn't give it to, say, this person over here?
Yeah, and it's people who want it. You know, I've got one girl at the restaurant who, that this is what she wants to do for a living. She wants to do content management so she came to me basically and was like, I need an internship. Like, would you let me do this? And it's like, sure. And so it's finding the strengths within people on the team.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. And as we're kind of wrapping up our episode here, I gotta throw a wild card in there. So, what's your favorite beer?
Ooh, okay. So my favorite beer, the first thing that came to mind was Desert Sun.
Yeah.
It's our double IPA. I'm an IPA girly. I love
Yeah.
all the hops. And so that is my favorite, and we have it on tap all of the time.
Yeah, that's like
And
one of your core beers,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of our cores, so I never have to cry that it's not on tap, you know, because we have like 5 cores, maybe 7 that stick around for the majority of the year, but everything else goes in and out.
Yeah.
And when you have a brewery come on the show, look, this is amazing. Thank
We did
you
not
so
expect
much.
that.
We
We
did
did not
not.
expect that.
Yes,
That's
but we
amazing.
got some nice product placement here.
So, Sam, tell us where people can find you guys. How can they find out more about what you guys are doing?
Well, they can come visit us at the tasting room here in Santa Clarita off of Rye Canyon. And socials, you can follow us on socials. We have an event coming up with Unlimited Beer Tasting June 20th. It's part of LA Beer Week. It's our Summer Tiki Fest. And so we invite a bunch of other breweries to come out, and we do full tastings and a hula hoop contest and a keg holding contest. And it's a really fun time. And so they can definitely grab tickets
What
to
is that?
What day?
Yeah.
Friday, June 20th.
Awesome. And then your other locations are Lancaster and Palmdale?
Correct.
Yeah.
Our original location is in Palmdale, and that is a brewery tasting room. So we have food trucks that come in and out of there as well. And then our Lancaster Boulevard location is a full-service restaurant. And so you can come and get burgers and wings, and we do an amazing burger of the month and a dessert of the month too. It's always something that is to die for. So.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching episode 10 of SchlickArtTV. We want to thank Samantha again for being here.
Thank you
It's
guys.
been amazing.
We'll see you guys next time.
Do you work here?
Sometimes. That's what I'm going to talk about in this open here. I'm going to talk about how sometimes I work here. That's what's changed about me.